Do you believe a single slap can topple an entire election campaign? He thought the hospital curtain and the beeping monitors would swallow everything whole. But from the bed half a step away, someone had witnessed it all. And she wasn't just anyone. I only needed two things: a legally placed camera and a signature granting access rights. The rest? I'd let the law and the spotlight do their work. My name is Olivia Harper, and at 34, I'd built my career on spotting risks before they exploded. As a clinical compliance specialist at Riverton General Hospital in Northlake, I spent my days ensuring every protocol was followed, every document properly filed, every potential liability identified and neutralized. It's ironic how the biggest threat to my family came from within, dressed in a $3,000 suit and campaign buttons. My mother, Linda, had just undergone hip replacement surgery. At 62, she'd postponed it too long. But that was Mom, always putting others first. The operation went smoothly, but recovery meant weeks of vulnerability, pain medication, and dependence on others. That's when Carl Whitaker, my stepfather of 8 years, saw his opportunity. Carl wasn't just any small-town businessman. He owned half the commercial real estate on Main Street and was neck-deep in his campaign for deputy mayor. His campaign posters plastered across town showed him with his arm around Mom, selling the image of the perfect family man. Integrity, family, progress. The slogan made me sick every time I passed one. The first red flag appeared 3 days after Mom's surgery. I arrived for my evening visit to find Carl hunched over her bed with a stack of documents, pen in hand. Mom's eyes were glassy from the morphine drip. "What are you doing?" I asked from the doorway. Carl's head snapped up. "Just handling some routine paperwork. Nothing for you to worry about." I stepped closer, recognizing the letterhead of Brennan and Associates, the law firm downtown. Power of attorney documents? Mom already has a healthcare proxy. Financial matters. Olivia, your mother asked me to handle things while she recovers. His tone was smooth, practiced, the voice he used at town halls. Mom's head lolled slightly. "Carl handles everything." "Mom, you're on heavy pain medication. Any legal documents signed now are perfectly valid," Carl interrupted. "Linda is of sound mind. Aren't you, sweetheart?" I photographed the scene with my phone before he could object. "I'll need copies of whatever she signs." "That's not necessary. It's hospital protocol. All legal documents executed on premises need to be logged." It wasn't, strictly speaking, but Carl didn't know our policies. His jaw tightened. "Fine, I'll have my assistant send them over." They never came. Over the next week, I pieced together Carl's plan through careful observation and my access to public records. A perk of my compliance role. 3 LLCs had been registered in the past month, all with addresses matching properties Mom owned before the marriage. Her vacation cottage in Oak Hills, the one Dad left her, was listed for sale at 60% below market value. The buyer? An anonymous cash offer through one of those new LLCs. I started documenting everything. Timestamps of Carl's visits, elevator logs, keycard access records. My compliance training had taught me the power of a paper trail. Every interaction, every suspicious transaction, every overhead conversation went into my encrypted files. The pattern became clear. Carl was liquidating Mom's assets, funneling the money through shell companies, and making suspiciously timed donations to his campaign fund, small enough to avoid mandatory reporting, frequent enough to fund his political ambitions. "You're paranoid," my friend Jessica said over coffee. "Carl's been good to your mom." "Good to her inheritance, you mean?" "Olivia, he's about to be deputy mayor. Why would he risk that for money?" "Because he needs money to become deputy mayor. Campaign funds are drying up. His main donor pulled out last month after that zoning scandal." I knew I needed more than suspicions and paper trails. I needed proof of criminal intent, something that would hold up in court and, more importantly, in the court of public opinion. Carl had connections. The police chief was his golf buddy. The district attorney attended his fundraisers. That's when I decided to confront him directly. but strategically. I scheduled a meeting at the hospital, in Mom's room, during the shift change when the floor would be busy but not chaotic. I told Carl I had concerns about Mom's care coordination that required his input as her spouse. He arrived 15 minutes late, irritated. Mom was sleeping, her afternoon medications keeping her comfortable but drowsy. "Make this quick. Olivia, I have a campaign event at 7. I pulled out my tablet, showing him the property listings. "Why is Mom's cottage for sale?" His face darkened. "Your mother and I make financial decisions together. Mom loves that cottage. Dad proposed to her there. Sentiment doesn't pay medical bills. Her insurance covers 90%. The sale price wouldn't even cover the remaining 10% at that listing price, unless the money's going somewhere else." Carl stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You need to mind your own business." "Mom is my business." "No," he said, stepping closer, using his height advantage. "She's my wife. I have legal authority here." Not if that authority was obtained through coercion. The mask slipped then. Just for a moment. I saw the real Carl. Not the polished candidate, but the desperate man who'd over-leveraged himself on bad investments and saw my mother's assets as his lifeline. "You have no idea what you're interfering with," he said quietly. "Back off, Olivia, for your own good." "Is that a threat?" "It's advice. From family." He left then, but not before taking Mom's medical chart from the foot of her bed, a violation of hospital protocol that I immediately documented and reported. That night, I called my mom's old attorney, Mr. Morrison, who'd retired but still kept his license active. He listened to my concerns and gave me sobering advice. Without clear evidence of coercion or incompetence at the time of signing, those POA documents will likely stand. You need something undeniable, Olivia, something that shows his true character. I didn't know then that the universe was about to deliver exactly that, wrapped in hospital curtains and witnessed by the most unexpected ally. The next afternoon, Mom had been moved to a semi-private recovery room, 2 beds separated by a retractable curtain. The other bed appeared empty, its privacy curtain drawn. I was reviewing her insurance paperwork when Carl stormed in, his face flushed with barely contained rage. "Where are the insurance authorization forms?" he demanded without preamble. "Which forms?" I kept my voice level, professional. "The ones for transferring her care to Meadowbrook facility. They need them today." Meadowbrook was a rehabilitation center 40 miles away, coincidentally owned by one of Carl's business partners. "Mom's doctor hasn't recommended transfer. She's doing well here." "That's not your call." "Actually, without valid POA for healthcare decisions, it's not yours either." I held the insurance folder against my chest, and I'm not releasing any documents without Mom's conscious consent. Carl's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. "Give me the damn papers!" "Let go." I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Playing detective, making phone calls to Morrison." His other hand shoved my shoulder, pushing me back against the wall. "You're going to destroy everything. The campaign, this family, your mother's future." "Carl, you're hurting me." "You stubborn little—" His hand came up fast, the slap catching me across the left cheek with enough force to snap my head sideways. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. My ears rang, my cheek burned, the insurance papers scattered across the floor. "You're nothing," he hissed, leaning close enough that I could smell the whiskey on his breath. "Just a bitter daughter who can't accept that Mommy has a new life. Keep interfering, and I'll make sure you lose that precious job of yours. I know people on the hospital board." He grabbed the papers from the floor, shoving them into his briefcase. "Stay away from your mother until you learn some respect." He left me there, my hand pressed to my burning cheek. Vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. The room felt impossibly quiet after his departure, just the steady beep of Mom's monitors and the whisper of forced air through the vents. "Are you all right, dear?" The voice came from behind the other bed's curtain, soft, cultured, with the kind of steel underneath that comes from years of authority. Yes, I'm sorry if we disturbed you. The curtain pulled back, revealing an elegant woman in her 70s. Silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the hospital gown. Her sharp blue eyes missed nothing as they took in my reddened cheek and defensive posture. "Eleanor Vale," she said, extending a manicured hand. "And you didn't disturb me. That man did." Eleanor Vale. I knew that name. Her late husband had donated the cardiac wing. Their name was on a bronze plaque in the main lobby. "I'm Olivia Harper. I work here, actually, compliance department." "And the patient?" "My mother." Mrs. Vale's expression hardened. "That man who struck you, her husband, I presume?" I nodded, suddenly exhausted. "Sit," she commanded, pointing to the visitor's chair beside her bed. "You look ready to collapse." I sat, and the story poured out. Carl's financial manipulation, the suspicious transactions, my fears for my mother's assets and well-being. Mrs. Vale listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding. "I've seen men like him before," she said when I finished. "They wear their cruelty like cologne, thinking power makes them untouchable." She reached for her call button. "Nurse, could you please come photograph Miss Harper's injury for the incident report?" The nurse who responded took one look at my face and immediately began following assault protocol. Photos from multiple angles, detailed documentation, questions about what happened. I answered truthfully while Carl's threats echoed in my mind. After the nurse left, Mrs. Vale smiled, a sharp, knowing expression. "You work in compliance, you said?" "Yes." "Then you understand the importance of documentation, evidence, witnesses." "Unfortunately, it's his word against mine." "Is it?" She gestured to a small black device mounted discreetly in the corner where the walls met the ceiling. "I have security concerns. A few too many aggressive reporters over the years trying to get deathbed statements about my husband's estate. My personal security system has been recording since I was admitted 3 days ago." My heart stopped. "Recording?" "Audio and video. My dear, crystal clear. That camera caught everything. The grab, the shove, the slap, the threats." She picked up her phone from the bedside table. "My lawyer will be very interested in this footage." "Mrs. Vale, I couldn't ask you to—" "You're not asking, I'm offering. That man is running for deputy mayor?" She shook her head. "Not in my town, not after what I just witnessed." She made a call, speaking quietly but firmly to someone named Daniel. When she hung up, she turned back to me. "My attorney will be here within the hour. We'll need your permission to retain and copy the footage, of course, but I maintain all rights to recordings made in my presence." Carl has connections. The police chief, the district attorney. "Local connections," she corrected. "I have state and federal ones. My nephew is an assistant U.S. attorney specializing in public corruption. My goddaughter runs the state's election commission." She patted my hand. "Your stepfather made a critical error today." "What's that?" "He assumed the only witness was powerless." Her smile turned predatory. "I haven't been powerless since 1973. Mom stirred in her bed, mumbling something incoherent. I moved to her side, adjusting her blanket, and found myself looking at her hands, the hands that taught me to be strong, to stand up for what's right, to document everything. She'd been a bookkeeper before she retired, meticulous about records. "We're going to protect her," Mrs. Vale said softly, "but first, we're going to destroy him, properly, legally, publicly." I touched my tender cheek, feeling the heat still radiating from Carl's palm print. "He'll fight back. He'll try to discredit me, say I'm vindictive, unstable." "Let him try." Mrs. Vale's phone buzzed with a text. "Daniel just arrived. He's bringing a forensic accountant and a private investigator." "Oh, and my dear? That camera system I mentioned? It's been uploading to a secure cloud server. Even if someone tried to destroy the local copy, we have backups." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt hope. Carl thought he'd silenced me with violence and intimidation. Instead, he'd just handed us the weapon we needed. The door opened, and 3 people in expensive suits walked in, led by a man who looked like he ate corporate lawsuits for breakfast. Mrs. Vale. He nodded, then turned to me. Miss Harper, I understand we have an assault to document and a financial crime to uncover. I stood straighter, my compliance training kicking in. I have files, transaction records, a timeline. Excellent. We'll start there. He glanced at Mrs. Vale. And the video? Ready for download, every second of it. The counterattack came faster than expected. By the next morning, Carl had already begun his campaign to discredit me. I arrived at work to find my supervisor, Janet, waiting in my office with HR representative Marcus Williams. Olivia, we need to discuss a serious complaint, Marcus said, not meeting my eyes. Filed by Carl Whitaker, I guessed. Janet shifted uncomfortably. He's alleging you've been accessing patient records inappropriately, specifically his wife's financial documents. I'm her daughter. I've been listed as her emergency contact and healthcare advocate for years. He claims you're experiencing emotional instability due to your parents' divorce and remarriage. Marcus read from his tablet that you've been harassing him during his visits, creating a hostile environment for patient care. I pulled out my phone, showing them the photos the nurse had taken yesterday. This is what Carl Whitaker did to me in room 314. There's an incident report filed. Marcus paled. Janet gasped. He also called Bob Morrison, a retired attorney, spreading lies about my mental state. I continued. I have the call logs. He's trying to silence me because I discovered he's been coercing my mother to sign over her assets while she's under heavy sedation. These are serious allegations, Marcus said carefully. The board is concerned about potential negative publicity during election season. So they want me to disappear quietly? A voluntary leave of absence has been suggested, Janet said apologetically. With pay, of course, until things settle. 2 weeks, Marcus added. The board feels it would be best for everyone. I wanted to fight, but Daniel Brennan, Mrs. Vale's attorney, had anticipated this. Take the leave, he'd advised. It keeps you employed while giving us room to maneuver. Fine, I said, but I want everything in writing. The terms, the duration, and especially that this is administrative leave, not disciplinary. Marcus nodded, relieved. Of course. As I packed my office, my phone buzzed. Carl had escalated. A text from a colleague at the nurses' station. Security just got orders to flag your access card. You're not allowed in your mom's room without supervision. The isolation tactic, classic abuser methodology. But Carl had underestimated both my preparation and my allies. Every document I'd gathered was already copied and secured. Mrs. Vale had arranged for a patient advocate to visit Mom daily. And most importantly, we'd filed for an emergency protective order that morning. Not for me, but for Mom, citing elder financial abuse. That afternoon, while Carl was at a campaign rally, the story began to leak. Not through me, I was honoring my leave agreement, but through concerned hospital staff who'd witnessed the aftermath of the assault. The local blog, North Lake Truth, ran a piece. Deputy Mayor candidate questions arise after hospital incident. Carl's campaign manager called me within an hour. What will it take for this to go away? She asked bluntly. Full withdrawal from Mom's power of attorney, return of all transferred assets, and Carl stays away from both of us. That's extortion. That's negotiation. Check your email. Daniel Brennan sent the terms an hour ago. She hung up. That evening, I sat in Mrs. Vale's study. She'd been discharged but insisted I use her home as a base of operations. The forensic accountant, Sarah Kim, had spread financial records across the mahogany desk. It's worse than you thought. Sarah said, the cottage sale was just the beginning. He's taken out 3 loans against properties in your mother's name, forged her signature on the applications. The money went straight to campaign advertising buys. That's federal fraud, Daniel noted. Campaign finance violations, wire fraud, forgery. He's looking at serious prison time. We need more than financial crimes. Mrs. Vale said from her wingback chair, the public forgives money scandals. They don't forgive violence against women. The video? I asked. Being enhanced as we speak. My security firm is preparing a broadcast quality version. My phone rang. Mom's number. Olivia? Her voice was clearer than it had been in days. Why haven't you visited? Carl said you were too busy. Mom, Carl's been lying to you. I'll explain everything. But first, has he asked you to sign anything else? A pause. The nurse wouldn't let him. Said something about a court order. He was furious. The emergency protective order had gone through. Mom, do you remember signing papers a few days ago? It's fuzzy. Carl said it was insurance forms. It wasn't. He tricked you into signing over power of attorney. We're fixing it. Oh, honey, no, Carl wouldn't. Mom, I have proof, video evidence, financial records. He's been stealing from you to fund his campaign. Silence stretched between us. The cottage? She finally asked. He said we needed to sell the cottage? He already listed it, below market value, to a company he secretly owns. I heard her sharp intake of breath. Your father proposed to me at that cottage. I know, Mom. We're going to stop him. Olivia. Her voice turned steel. The voice I remembered from childhood when someone tried to cheat her at the grocery store. Destroy him. I smiled for the first time in days. Already in progress. After hanging up, I turned to the team assembled in Mrs. Vale's study. She's on board. What's our next move? Daniel pulled up a calendar on his laptop. The next campaign debate is Thursday, 3 days from now, public forum, broadcast live on local cable. Perfect, Mrs. Vale said. A captive audience, media present, and Carl on stage unable to escape. We'll need the prosecutor on board by then, Sarah added. These financial documents alone should be enough for an arrest warrant. My nephew is already reviewing everything, Mrs. Vale assured us. Federal prosecutors love campaign finance violations. It's like Christmas morning for them. I touched my cheek, where the bruise had darkened to purple-green. Carl thought he'd won by getting me suspended, by isolating me from Mom, by spreading his poison through the hospital administration. He had no idea what was coming. There's one more thing, I said. The nurse who documented my injury, she heard Carl threaten my job. She's willing to testify. Daniel made a note. Witness tampering, add it to the list. Outside, October rain began to fall, spattering against the tall windows of Mrs. Vale's study. 3 days until the debate. 3 days to compile everything into an airtight case that would end Carl's political career and quite possibly his freedom. You know, Mrs. Vale mused, swirling her brandy. I haven't enjoyed myself this much since I took down that congressman in '98. What happened to him? Sarah asked. Oh, he's still in federal prison. Mail fraud, tax evasion, and assault. She raised her glass to me. But he only slapped his secretary. Your stepfather slapped the wrong woman's protege. The revelation came from an unexpected source. While I was locked out of the hospital, Mrs. Vale had arranged for her personal physician, Dr. Margaret Steele, to take over Mom's care. Dr. Steele was thorough, obsessively so. She ordered a complete review of Mom's medication history, and that's when she found it. Your mother was given 3 times the standard dose of Dilaudid on the day she signed those papers. Doctor, Steele told me over the phone. The nursing notes show Carl specifically requested maximum pain management that morning, overriding the standard protocol. That's medication tampering, I said, gripping the phone tighter. It's more than that. The dose administered would have significantly impaired her cognitive function. Any document signed under that level of sedation could be challenged as invalid. I immediately called Daniel, who was already drafting subpoenas. Get me the medication administration records, the pharmacy logs, everything, and find out which nurse administered those doses. The nurse turned out to be Teresa Coleman, a traveling nurse who'd only worked 3 shifts at Riverton General, all coincidentally when Mom needed extra medication. She'd left town immediately after, but our private investigator tracked her down to a motel 2 states away, where she broke down and admitted Carl had paid her $10,000 to ensure Mom was comfortable during his visits. "I didn't know he was getting her to sign things," Teresa sobbed over the recorded phone call. "He said she was in terrible pain, that the regular nurses weren't compassionate enough." Another felony, another witness. But Mrs. Vale wasn't satisfied with just building a legal case. "We need public momentum," she declared during our strategy session. "The court of public opinion matters as much as the legal one." She orchestrated a brilliant campaign. First, she had her accountant accidentally mention at the country club that strange financial transactions had been flagged in Carl's campaign funds. Within hours, the gossip mill was churning. Then she arranged for the local newspaper to receive an anonymous tip about the cottage sale, complete with documentation showing the buyer's LLC traced back to Carl's assistant. The newspaper ran the story on Tuesday. Questions arise over deputy mayor candidate's property dealings. Carl's response was predictable. He held a press conference, my mother prominently displayed beside him in a wheelchair, looking frail and confused. "These are baseless attacks from a disgruntled stepdaughter who has never accepted her mother's happiness," he announced. "Olivia Harper has a history of mental instability and vindictive behavior. I've had to take legal measures to protect my wife from her own daughter's harassment." Mom sat silent, her eyes unfocused. They'd clearly medicated her for the appearance. "That son of a bitch," I muttered, watching the live stream from Mrs. Vale's study. "Perfect," Daniel said, surprising me. "He just went on record denying everything. Makes the reveal so much sweeter." The investigator, Mike Torres, had been busy. He'd pulled security footage from the hospital parking garage showing Carl meeting with Teresa Coleman, passing her an envelope. He'd obtained bank records showing the $10,000 withdrawal from Carl's personal account the day before. He'd even found the pharmacy tech who'd questioned the unusual medication orders, but been told to process them anyway. "Every lie creates a trail," Mike explained. "Carl's been so focused on covering the big crime, the financial fraud, he got sloppy with the details." Wednesday arrived with a surprise. The hospital board, facing mounting pressure and the threat of a federal investigation into patient safety violations, suddenly reversed course. Marcus from HR called personally. "The board has reviewed the situation," he said carefully. "Your administrative leave has been converted to paid time off, and you're welcome to return whenever you feel ready. Additionally, security has been instructed to grant you full access to visit your mother." What changed their minds? Mrs. Vale bought a table at the hospital's upcoming gala, a $100,000 table, and mentioned she's considering funding a new patient advocacy program. Money talks, even in healthcare. I visited Mom that afternoon. She was lucid. The proper medication protocols restored. Carl had been barred from her room by the protective order, though he'd sent flowers, a massive arrangement that screamed desperation. "I remember more now," Mom said, holding my hand. "The papers, the pressure, he kept saying it was for our future, that the campaign would make us important people. Mom, I need you to do something tomorrow, during the debate." "Anything." I explained the plan. Her eyes widened, then narrowed with determination. "That bastard drugged me?" "We have proof," the nurse confessed. "The pharmacy records show everything." She squeezed my hand harder. "Your father would be proud of you. Olivia, standing up to a bully." That evening, final preparations were made. The prosecutor, Mrs. Vale's nephew James, had expedited the warrant. It would be signed by a federal judge Thursday morning, ready for execution during the debate. "We have him on federal wire fraud, campaign finance violations, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit medical battery," James summarized. "That's 15 to 20 years minimum." Sarah had finished the forensic accounting. Total theft and fraud, $1.8 million, including the attempted cottage sale, the fraudulent loans, and the campaign fund diversions. Daniel had prepared the media packets, USB drives containing the video of Carl assaulting me, the financial evidence, and Teresa Coleman's confession. They'd be distributed to every media outlet the moment Carl took the stage. "You realize," Mrs. Vale said, pouring champagne despite the circumstances, "tomorrow will end him, completely. No recovery, no spin, no second chances." I thought about the bruise on my cheek, now fading to yellow-green, about Mom's confusion and fear, about Carl's smug certainty that power and connections made him untouchable. "Good," I said, accepting the champagne. "Some people deserve their endings." Mrs. Vale raised her glass. "To paper trails and patient advocacy." "To yesterday," Daniel added. "To my mother," I said quietly, "who taught me to document everything." Thursday would dawn with Carl Whitaker thinking he was about to triumph in his debate, cementing his path to deputy mayor. He had no idea that every document was in place, every witness ready, every trap set. The paper trail he dismissed as bureaucratic nonsense would become the noose around his political neck, and the woman he'd slapped in a hospital room would be sitting in the front row, watching his empire crumble in real time. "One more thing," James said as we prepared to leave. "The FBI wants to observe tomorrow. Apparently, they've been investigating campaign finance irregularities in several local races. Carl just made their job much easier." The federal anvil was about to drop, and Carl was standing directly beneath it, still looking up at his imagined glory. The beauty of a paper trail is its indifference to power or persuasion. Numbers don't lie. Timestamps can't be charmed. Digital footprints persist despite protests of innocence. I spent Wednesday night in the conference room of Daniel's law firm, surrounded by the evidence we'd methodically assembled. My compliance training had prepared me for this. The careful cross-referencing, the chain of custody, the irrefutable sequencing of events. "Start with the timeline," Daniel instructed. "Judges love chronology." I pulled up the master document on my laptop. October 2nd, 10:47 a.m. Carl enters the hospital using his visitor pass. Security log confirmed. 10:52 a.m. He badges into the pharmacy wing, supposedly looking for the restroom. 10:54 a.m. Teresa Coleman accesses the medication system and overrides the standard dilaudid protocol for Linda Harper. 11:15 a.m. Sarah continued, reading from her forensic analysis. First forged signature appears on the power of attorney document. Notice the pen pressure, consistent with someone who's heavily sedated, guided hand motion. Mike Torres added his findings. 11:22 a.m. Building security camera shows Carl in the main lobby, making a call. Phone records subpoenaed from Verizon confirm he called his attorney to file the POA papers immediately. 11:45 a.m. I resumed. Mom's electronic signature appears on a wire transfer authorization moving $400,000 from her investment account to a new LLC called Northlake Holdings. The IP address traces to Carl's laptop. Every crime created data. Every piece of data told a story. "The cottage listing?" Daniel prompted. Posted online at 2:15 p.m. the same day. Listed at $180,000 when the tax assessment values it at $300,000. The buying LLC was created just 6 hours earlier. Sarah pulled up bank records. The pattern is obvious once you map it. Money flows from Linda's accounts to shell companies, sits for 24, 48 hours, then moves to smaller amounts, all under $10,000 to avoid federal reporting requirements, into Carl's campaign fund. "Structured deposits," James said from the speakerphone, calling from the federal prosecutor's office. "That alone is a felony." He thought he was being clever, but he just added money laundering to his charges. I'd created a visual chart, the kind prosecutors love for juries, boxes and arrows showing the money flow, color-coded by date, with corresponding evidence numbers. Carl's financial DNA was all over it. Now the medication logs, I said, switching screens. 3 shifts where Teresa Coleman worked, each shift. Mom received excess pain medication precisely 45 minutes before Carl's visits. The correlation is 100%. Mike had done incredible work. Coleman's bank records show a $10,000 cash deposit October 3rd. She bought a bus ticket out of state October 5th, right after her last shift. Her motel was paid for with a credit card. The bill traced back to another Carl shell company. Consciousness of guilt, James noted. Juries love it when criminals run. The elevator access logs were particularly damning. Carl had used his visitor badge to access restricted areas 14 times, always when specific nurses were on break, always when Mom was scheduled for medication. He studied the patterns, I explained, knew when she'd be most vulnerable. Speaking of patterns, Daniel pulled up another document. Let's discuss the campaign finances. Sarah had outdone herself here. Carl's campaign reported raising $1.2 million, impressive for a deputy mayor race, but when you analyze the donors, 60% are LLCs created within the last 6 months, all registered to variations of the same 5 addresses, properties owned by Carl or his associates. He was donating to himself, Mike clarified, using stolen money to create the appearance of grassroots support. I pulled up the Federal Election Commission regulations. Maximum individual contribution is $2,900 per election. Carl created phantom donors to circumvent limits. Each LLC could donate separately, even though the money all came from the same source, Mom's accounts. The FBI will love this, James said. It's like he wrote a textbook on campaign finance violations. But the crown jewel of our paper trail was something unexpected. Mike had found it while reviewing Carl's business emails, obtained through a subpoena of his campaign headquarters server. Look at this, Mike said, pulling up an email dated 3 months ago. Carl to his campaign manager. Linda's assets could solve our funding problem. She trusts me completely. Just need the right moment when she's vulnerable. Premeditation, in writing, in his own words. He planned this before her surgery was even scheduled, I said quietly. Daniel nodded. That turns this from exploitation into conspiracy. He deliberately waited for her medical vulnerability. I thought about Mom, recovering in her hospital bed, slowly piecing together the betrayal. The man she'd trusted, loved, married. He'd seen her as nothing more than a funding source. The debate tomorrow, Daniel said, shifting focus. The warrant will be signed at 9 a.m. The debate starts at 7 p.m. We'll have everything ready. Media packets? I asked. 30 USB drives prepared, each containing the video, the financial charts, excerpts from the medication logs, and Coleman's confession. The moment Carl takes the stage, they go out. Sarah had created something special. A single-page infographic that told the whole story, theft amount at the top, timeline in the middle, charges at the bottom. For social media, she explained. It'll go viral in minutes. Local news? Mike asked. They're primed. 3 reporters have been investigating Carl's finances for weeks, hitting dead ends. Tomorrow, we hand them the whole story, gift-wrapped with evidence. James cleared his throat on the phone. The arrest team will be in place, 4 FBI agents, 2 U.S. Marshals. They'll wait for my signal. And Mom? I asked. She'll be there, Daniel confirmed. Doctor, Steele cleared her for the 2-hour absence, full mobility, clear-headed. She wants to look Carl in the eyes when it happens. I studied the conference room walls, covered with our evidence, printed emails, bank statements, screenshots, logs, photos, each one labeled, numbered, cross-referenced. Any single piece might be explained away. Together, they formed an inescapable net. You know what's ironic? I said. Carl always bragged about leaving no paper trail, doing everything with handshakes and verbal agreements in his real estate deals. But crime requires documentation. Sarah observed, banks need forms, transfers need authorization. Campaigns need reports. And hospitals, I added. Document everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Ready for tomorrow? Wearing my Navy suit? The one from Dad's funeral. Seems appropriate for another burial. Mrs. Vale had been quiet during our review, but now she stood. Gentlemen, ladies, you've built something magnificent here. Not just a case, but a monument to the principle that evidence matters more than influence. She walked to the window, looking out at North Lake's skyline, where Carl's campaign posters decorated every other streetlight. Tomorrow, those posters become historical artifacts, the last trace of Carl Whitaker's political ambitions. I joined her at the window. He could have just been a mediocre businessman with an ego. Instead, he chose to be a criminal. The paper trail doesn't care about his choices. Mrs. Vale replied. It only cares about his actions, and his actions, my dear, have been extensively documented. Carl's counteroffensive began at dawn Thursday. I woke to 17 missed calls and a text from Janet. Check the news, now. The morning show had Carl live in studio. My face plastered on the screen behind him. Specifically, an old photo from my college years at a protest, carefully cropped to look aggressive. Olivia Harper has a history of radical behavior, Carl said smoothly. She's never accepted her mother's remarriage. Now she's fabricating evidence, manipulating hospital records, trying to destroy our family. The host, clearly prepped with Carl's talking points, nodded sympathetically. You're saying this is a vendetta? I'm saying a disturbed woman with access to confidential systems is weaponizing them against her mother's husband. I've filed complaints with the hospital board, the state medical licensing board, and the FBI about her illegal access to private records. My phone rang immediately. Marcus from HR. Olivia, the board is in emergency session. Carl's lawyer just delivered a cease and desist order and threatened a $50 million lawsuit against the hospital. For what? Allowing you to steal patient data. They want you terminated immediately. Marcus, I have everything documented. Every access was legitimate. I know, but the board is panicking. The chairman is friends with Carl. They've scheduled a vote for noon about your termination. I hung up and called Daniel. Carl's trying to get me fired before the debate. Let him try. We file our response at 11:45. The board will have to table any action pending legal review. But Carl wasn't done. By 9 a.m., a process server found me at Mrs. Vale's house with an emergency restraining order. Carl was seeking to bar me from the debate venue, claiming I posed a threat to his safety. This is desperate, Daniel said, reviewing the filing. He's throwing everything at the wall. He knows something's coming. Mrs. Vale observed. Wounded animals are always the most dangerous. The hearing was set for 2 p.m., 5 hours before the debate. Carl was trying to tie us up in court, prevent us from attending. I'll handle the hearing, Daniel said. You focus on the media packets. But at 10 a.m., we got hit with something unexpected. Mike burst into the war room. We have a problem. Teresa Coleman just recanted her confession. What? She's claiming we coerced her, that she was confused, that Carl never paid her anything. She's hired a lawyer, one of Carl's golf buddies. Sarah's fingers flew over her laptop. Her bank account just received a $50,000 wire transfer from another LLC, posted an hour ago. He's buying her silence, I said. Too late. James's voice came through the speakerphone. We have her original recorded confession, the bank records, the video surveillance. She can recant all she wants. The evidence stands. But the damage to public perception was immediate. Carl's campaign released a statement. Key witness admits lying about Carl Whitaker. Stepdaughter's conspiracy collapses. Social media exploded. Carl's supporters attacked me relentlessly. Someone posted my address. Death threats started arriving in my inbox. Stay focused. Mrs. Vale commanded. This is desperation disguised as strength. At 11:30, another blow, the hospital board voted, 8-3, to terminate my employment effective immediately. My access was revoked. My email deleted. My decade of service erased. Janet called, crying. I'm so sorry. Olivia, the chairman gave us no choice. He said it was this, or Carl sues the hospital into bankruptcy. I sat in stunned silence. My career, my identity, gone. Perfect, Daniel said. I stared at him. Perfect? Wrongful termination, retaliation, violation of whistleblower protections. You just became a multimillionaire. Olivia, the hospital will settle for 7 figures minimum. I don't want money, I want justice. You'll get both. Mrs. Vale said. She made a call. Channel 7? Yes, I have a story about the hospital board's emergency meeting. Very interesting timing, wouldn't you say? By noon, the narrative was shifting. Hospital fires employee who reported elder abuse ran on 3 news sites. The 2 p.m. hearing was a circus. Carl's lawyer argued I was a clear and present danger, citing my history of instability and recent termination for cause. Daniel destroyed him. Your Honor, Miss, Harper has no criminal record, no history of violence, and was terminated this morning in clear retaliation for reporting elder abuse. Mr. Whitaker, however, Daniel placed a folder on the judge's bench, is the subject of an active FBI investigation for financial crimes. The judge's eyebrows rose. FBI investigation? Additionally, Daniel continued, we have video evidence of Mr. Whitaker physically assaulting Miss Harper in a hospital room. Would you like to see it? Carl's lawyer objected frantically, but the judge allowed it. The courtroom watched in silence as the enhanced video played, Carl's hand striking my face, the sound crisp and clear. Motion denied, the judge said coldly. And Mr. Whitaker, I'm forwarding this video to the district attorney's office. Carl stormed out, his face purple with rage. As he passed, he hissed, You're finished. After tonight, you'll have nothing. We'll see, I replied. By 5 p.m., the media had the story. Deputy mayor candidate caught on video assaulting woman, spread across social media. Carl's campaign issued denials, claimed deep fakes, threatened lawsuits. But momentum had shifted. 3 former employees of Carl's real estate company came forward with their own stories of intimidation. A city councilman withdrew his endorsement. Mom called from the hospital. The news is on. They're showing the video. Are you okay? I'm better than okay, doctor. Steele gave me a mild stimulant. Perfectly safe. She says, I want to be completely alert tonight. You don't have to come, Mom. It might be too stressful. Olivia, she interrupted. He drugged me, stole from me, and hit my daughter. I wouldn't miss his destruction for the world. At 6 p.m., we gathered in the parking lot of the North Lake Civic Center. Mom in her navy suit, walking with a cane but steady, Mrs. Vale in elegant black, looking like an avenging angel, Daniel with his briefcase of evidence, Mike with the media packets, Sarah with her laptop, ready to upload everything. FBI agents in unmarked cars, U.S., marshals by the exits, local reporters with cameras ready. Everyone knows their role? Daniel asked. Nods all around. Then let's go watch Carl Whitaker end his own career. Mrs. Vale said. As we entered, Carl was already on stage for sound check, confident and commanding. He saw us and froze, just for a moment, before recovering his politician's smile. He still thought he could win this. He still believed his connections, his threats, his money could save him. In exactly 1 hour, he would learn otherwise. The paper trail we'd built, the witnesses we'd gathered, the evidence we'd compiled, it was all about to converge in one devastating moment. Carl had started this war with a slap. We were about to end it with the truth. The North Lake Civic Center was packed, 700 seats, all filled, with standing room only in the back. The debate stage was set with 2 podiums, bright lights, and a moderator's table where Patricia Wells from Channel 7 shuffled her question cards. We took our seats in the front row. Impossible to miss. impossible to ignore. I sat between Mom and Mrs. Vale, with Daniel on the aisle. The FBI agents were scattered throughout the audience, invisible in their calculated normalcy. The media packets had been distributed to every reporter during the reception. Carl entered from stage left at 7 p.m. sharp, waving to supporters, his campaign smile perfectly calibrated. His eyes found us immediately, and I saw the micro-expression, a flash of uncertainty before the mask reformed. His opponent, Rebecca Torres, entered from stage right, a city councilwoman with 20 years of experience. She'd been trailing in polls until this morning's news broke. "Good evening, Northlake." Patricia began. "Tonight's debate focuses on leadership, integrity, and vision for our city's future." The first 20 minutes were standard political theater. Infrastructure, budget allocations, school funding. Carl performed well, his prepared answers smooth and practiced. You'd never know he was under FBI investigation. Then Patricia shifted. "Mr. Whitaker, this morning a video surfaced showing you in a physical altercation at Riverton General Hospital. How do you respond?" Carl didn't hesitate. That video has been manipulated by political opponents desperate to stop real change in Northlake. My stepdaughter, who was terminated today for stealing hospital records, has orchestrated a smear campaign. "Mr. Whitaker," Patricia interrupted, "are you saying the video is fake?" "I'm saying it lacks context. Family disagreements happen, but to weaponize them politically shows the depth some people will sink to." From my seat, I felt Mom's hand tighten on mine. "Not yet." Rebecca Torres spoke carefully. "Mr. Whitaker, context or not, the video shows you striking a woman. How is that acceptable leadership?" "What's unacceptable?" Carl responded, turning aggressive. "Is how mental health issues in families get exploited. My stepdaughter has struggled with stability for years. We've tried to help her, but..." That's when Mom stood up. The entire auditorium turned. Linda Harper, 72 years old, post-surgical but ramrod straight, walked slowly to the audience microphone set up for Kwanda. "I'd like to address Mr. Whitaker's claims about my daughter's mental health," she said, her voice clear and steady. Patricia looked uncertain. "Ma'am, the Kwanda portion is scheduled for..." "Let her speak," someone shouted from the back. Then another. "Let her speak." The chant built until Patricia nodded. Mom looked directly at Carl. "My daughter has no mental health issues. What she has is evidence that you drugged me, stole my money, and assaulted her when she tried to protect me." The auditorium erupted. Carl gripped the podium. "Linda, you're confused. Your medication." "The medication you had a nurse overdose me with?" Mom pulled out a paper. "I have the pharmacy records right here. Triple doses of Dilaudid administered on your orders, 30 minutes before you had me sign financial documents." "This is ambush journalism," Carl's campaign manager shouted from the wings. But Mom wasn't finished. She held up another document. "This is a notarized statement revoking all power of attorney granted to Carl Whitaker, signed today, in front of 3 witnesses, while completely lucid." Daniel stood then, his voice carrying over the chaos. "Mr. Whitaker, you've been served." He held up a federal warrant. "FBI agents are here to arrest you on charges of wire fraud, money laundering, campaign finance violations, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse." The audience gasped as 4 agents moved toward the stage. Carl looked frantically for exits, but U.S. Marshals blocked each one. "This is ridiculous," Carl shouted into his microphone. "This is political persecution. I'm being set up by..." Sarah's fingers moved on her laptop. Suddenly, the Civic Center's main screen, meant for displaying candidate information, lit up with Carl's email. "Linda's assets could solve our funding problem. She trusts me completely. Just need the right moment when she's vulnerable." Then bank records. Transfer after transfer from Mom's accounts to shell companies to campaign funds. The forensic accounting chart. Clear and damning. Then the video. Not the slap this time. The full recording. Carl grabbing me, shoving me, threatening my job, saying he'd destroy me if I interfered. The audience sat in stunned silence, watching Carl Whitaker reveal himself in his own words and actions. Rebecca Torres stepped away from her podium, giving the agents clear access to Carl. "You can't do this here," Carl protested as they approached. "I'm in the middle of a debate." Actually, James, the federal prosecutor, had appeared beside the stage. "This is the perfect venue. Financial crimes affect the entire community. They should see justice served." The agents reached Carl. "Hands behind your back, Mr. Whitaker." For a moment, Carl looked ready to run. Then his shoulders sagged. The mask finally, completely, fell. As the handcuffs clicked, he turned to me with pure hatred. "You destroyed everything." "No," I said, loud enough for the microphones to catch. "You did. I just documented it." They led him out through the center aisle, past 700 witnesses, past rolling cameras, past the shattered remains of his political ambitions. His campaign manager tried to follow but was stopped by another agent. She was being arrested too, for conspiracy. Patricia Wells, ever the professional, returned to her microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes tonight's event. Miss Torres, as the only remaining candidate, I withdraw from the race," Rebecca announced. "Northlake needs a clean slate. Let's hold a new election, with new candidates, free from any association with this corruption." The audience erupted in applause. Mom made her way back to me, exhausted but triumphant. "How did I do?" "Perfect," I said, hugging her carefully. "Mrs." Vale stood, adjusting her pearl necklace. "Well, that was satisfying, though I do think the handcuffs were a nice touch." Mike appeared with his phone. "It's already trending. #Northlake debate, #Carl cuffed, #Elder Justice. The video has 2 million views in 10 minutes. A reporter pushed forward. "Miss Harper, how does it feel to see your stepfather arrested?" I thought about the question. How did it feel? Relief? Vindication? "It feels like justice," I finally said. "And justice doesn't care about feelings. It cares about facts. Tonight, the facts won." As we left the Civic Center, I saw the campaign posters being torn down by volunteers. Carl's smiling face, his promises of integrity and family values, crumpled and discarded. Daniel walked beside me. "The hospital called. The board held another emergency vote. They're offering you reinstatement with full back pay, a promotion, and a formal apology." "Tell them I'll think about it," I said, "after they fire the chairman who tried to protect Carl." "Already done. He resigned an hour ago." Mrs. Vale's car pulled up, her driver holding the door. "Celebration dinner? I'm thinking champagne and revenge served cold." Mom laughed, the first real laugh I'd heard from her in months. "I think we've had enough revenge for one night." "Never enough when it's this well documented." "Mrs." Vale replied with a wink. As we drove away, I looked back at the Civic Center where news vans were still gathering, their bright lights illuminating the truth we'd dragged into the open. Carl had thought he was untouchable, protected by power and connections. He'd forgotten the fundamental rule of the digital age: everything leaves a trace. And I'd learned to follow every single one. The handcuffs clicked with a finality that echoed through the Civic Center. Carl Whitaker, the man who'd terrorized my mother and assaulted me, was being led away by FBI agents while 700 witnesses watched in stunned silence. "You can't do this," Carl shouted one last time, twisting to look back at us. "This is entrapment. Set up." The federal prosecutor, James, stepped forward with practiced calm. "Mr. Whitaker, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." As they reached the exit, Carl made one final attempt at control, turning to address the cameras. "This is a conspiracy." The agents pulled him through the doors, cutting off his words. The heavy doors swung shut with a thunderous bang that seemed to punctuate the end of his political career, his freedom, and his facade of respectability. Patricia Wells, the debate moderator, stood frozen at her podium for a moment, before her journalistic instincts kicked in. Ladies and gentlemen, we've just witnessed an unprecedented event in Northlake's political history, the arrest of a candidate during a live debate on federal charges. The audience erupted, some cheering, others arguing, most simply stunned. Reporters rushed toward us, but Mrs. Vale's security team had already formed a protective barrier. "Miss Harper," a journalist shouted, "will you be pressing additional charges?" Daniel stepped forward, ever the professional. "My client will be cooperating fully with federal prosecutors. Any additional charges will be determined by the U.S. Attorney's Office." Mom gripped my arm, her strength surprising. "I want to see his office." "Mom?" "His campaign headquarters. I want to see it." Mrs. Vale understood immediately. "Closure. Yes, let's go." We drove 3 blocks to the storefront Carl had rented for his campaign. The lights were still on, volunteers inside scrambling, phones ringing incessantly. Through the window, we could see them pulling down posters, shoving documents into boxes, destroying evidence they didn't know we already had. 6 months ago, he stood here and announced his candidacy. Mom said quietly, I stood beside him, believing his lies about building a better future. "You couldn't have known," I said. "No, but I should have listened to you. You saw through him from the beginning." A young volunteer came out carrying a box, saw us, and stopped dead. "Mrs. Mrs. Harper." "Burn it all," Mom told him. "Every poster, every button, every lie he printed, burn it." The volunteer nodded and hurried away. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Check the news." The video of Carl's arrest had already gone viral. 3 million views in an hour, the headline on CNN. "Candidate arrested mid-debate in unprecedented federal takedown." But it was a smaller story that caught my attention. The traveling nurse, Teresa Coleman, had been arrested at the state border trying to flee. The $50,000 Carl paid for her silence had become evidence of witness tampering. "She'll testify now," Daniel predicted. "Facing federal charges herself. She'll cooperate fully." We returned to Mrs. Vale's estate for what she called a proper celebration. The champagne was vintage, the satisfaction even richer. "You know what the best part is?" Mrs. Vale mused, swirling her glass. "He did this to himself, every forged signature, every shell company, every threat. He built his own prison." "The paper trail," I agreed. "He never thought anyone would follow it." Mom had been quiet, processing everything. Finally, she spoke. "The cottage, can we get it back?" Daniel smiled. "Already in motion. The sale was fraudulent. Completed under duress. It'll be reversed within the week." "Good," Mom said firmly. "I want to go there, where your father proposed, where real love existed." The next morning brought a cascade of consequences. Carl's assets were frozen by federal order. His real estate company's licenses were suspended pending investigation. 3 more women came forward with stories of harassment and intimidation. The hospital board officially apologized and offered me a significant settlement, which I accepted with the condition that they implement new protocols for protecting vulnerable patients from financial exploitation. "You could have asked for more," Daniel said. "I got what I wanted: systemic change and Carl in custody." The trial would take months, but the outcome was certain. With Teresa Coleman's testimony, the video evidence, and the paper trail we'd assembled, Carl faced 25 to 30 years in federal prison. At the sentencing 6 months later, Carl's attorney pleaded for leniency, citing his client's previous good standing in the community. Judge Harrison, a federal judge known for his intolerance of financial crimes, wasn't moved. "Mr. Whitaker, you held a position of trust. You were a husband, a stepfather, a candidate for public office. You betrayed every one of those roles. You drugged an elderly woman, stole her life savings, and assaulted her daughter when she tried to protect her mother." Carl stood in his orange jumpsuit, shackled, a shadow of his former self. Furthermore, the judge continued, you attempted to corrupt our electoral process, using stolen funds to finance your political ambitions. You represent everything wrong with those who believe power places them above the law. The sentence, 28 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole for 15 years, full restitution of all stolen funds, and a lifetime ban from holding any fiduciary position. The gavel came down with decisive finality. As we left the courthouse, Mom stopped on the steps where Carl had once announced his candidacy. It's over, she said, more statement than question. It's over, I confirmed. Mrs. Vaughn, who'd attended every day of the trial, smiled her sharp smile. Oh, my dear Linda, it's not over. It's just beginning. You're free now. Free to live without fear, without lies, without him. Mom straightened, the weight of months lifting from her shoulders. You're right. This isn't an ending. It's a liberation. We drove to the cottage that afternoon, the one Dad had proposed in, the one Carl had tried to steal. Mom stood in the garden, looking at the roses Dad had planted years ago, still blooming despite the neglect. Your father always said documents don't lie. She said, bank statements, contracts, recordings, they tell the truth when people won't. Is that why you taught me to document everything? She smiled. That, and because I knew someday you might need to fight someone who thought they were untouchable, I just never imagined it would be to protect me. The sunset painted the cottage golden, and for the first time since Carl's campaign began, we felt peace. Carl Whitaker had thought a slap would silence me. Instead, it had awakened an army of truth-seekers, armed with evidence and righteous fury. He'd thought his connections would protect him. Instead, they'd become co-conspirators in his downfall. He'd thought power meant impunity. He'd learned, in handcuffs and headlines, that justice might be slow, but it was inexorable. And I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic or violent. It's methodical, legal, and thoroughly documented. The paper trail always wins in the end. Thank you so much for listening to this story of justice served cold and documented thoroughly. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story of standing up to corruption resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts about fighting for what's right. What would you have done in Olivia's situation? Let me know in the comments.